let's give it a shot. It's been sitting for 5 years, kind of in the middle of the woods, middle of nowhere, South Carolina, from Alaska, 103,000 miles. Let's see what happens.
No.
Alright guys, so today we're going to rescue a car that is in the junkyard, something that most of you guys might find pretty interesting. It's not a Subaru, and that's about all I'm going to say. Obviously, if you've seen the title of the video, you know exactly what we're picking up. But right now I got to get the trailer hooked up. Got to test out the little manual winch that I bought because I don't have a winch set up on my trailer yet, and then pump up the tire and we'll be good to go. So it's about an hour away, so nothing too crazy, and this car is legit, like in the woods, hasn't been running for 3 years, but it's low mileage and it's in pretty good shape. So we're gonna get the trailer hooked up and then hit the road.
That I made by myself, oh, and I always do the wrong thing. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now.
Alright, so it's been a couple days now since we picked up the car, got it unloaded. It's in my yard now, and it is time to see if this thing will run. So, a little bit of a backstory on this car. It's originally from Alaska. It does not have factory AC, which I don't know if that's like a base model thing or if it's actually like an Alaska thing. But it's been sitting for about 5 years, and I have no idea if this thing actually runs or not. So today, we're going to check a couple things and then we're going to crank it up and see if it'll start. So before we do that, kind of want to do a little bit of a walk around on the car. As you can see, it has some rust issues. I don't know what it is about me and buying rusty cars, but I guess it's just kind of my thing at this point. From what I've seen on the cars so far, the only rust is right here on the quarter and then a little bit in the inner wheel well on this side. The other side is completely fine, so I'm not really sure how that happened or why that is. But so inside the car, obviously it's pretty gross, pretty dirty, lots of stuff missing. You can see right there. The biggest issue is the ignition. Obviously it has been messed with at some point, so to start it, we're going to be using this right here. Windshield is cracked, which is very unfortunate, but it's a good thing that it's the front and not the rear. Now, unfortunately, the car is an automatic. That really sucks, but at the same time, it'll be great as far as content goes because we'll get to do a manual swap on the car. But for right now, all that aside, obviously not too worried about the windshield right now, not worried about missing pieces and everything. We need to know if it runs. So we're gonna go under the hood and check a few things out and see if we can get her started up. So as you can see, pretty crusty, lots of surface rust, not the best looking engine bay you've ever seen, but everything looks like it's there. Nothing looks like it's missing. I've already pulled the spark plugs and looked at those. They look okay. There's a few things that are not so good down here, like this negative wire, and as you can see how it's grounded, that's not good at all. But we're gonna go ahead and get this thing ready to start up. First thing we're gonna do is plug the battery in, and then we're gonna get a jump box on it, and then we're gonna make sure that we have oil and coolant, and we will see what it does. I'm not sure if it's showing up on camera. We're a little low, but the oil looks literally perfect. So I'm gonna top that off here in a second. So there is coolant in there. You can see that is a little low, so that might cause some sort of an idle issue, and this may be lower if the car starts and runs. So we'll see about that. Okay, so oil's topped off. I'm gonna leave the radiator cap off just so we can see that coolant level changes. Obviously the car's been sitting for 5 years, so the gas could potentially be bad, but we're gonna go ahead and start it up and see what happens. One last thing before we attempt to start this car has 103,000 original miles. Extremely low miles for a Civic this old, but I got the key right here. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the janky ignition. We got lights, fuel pumps priming. Sounds good. Let's give it a shot. It's been sitting for 5 years, kind of in the middle of the woods, middle of nowhere, South Carolina, from Alaska, 103,000 miles. Let's see what happens. There it goes. Gas pedal's a little sticky, but it's running. Listen to that. Started right up. Sounds pretty good, sounds pretty healthy. Don't want to go too crazy. Okay. Coolant level's about the same. We're gonna let the car warm up just to see if that coolant level will go way down. I'm assuming that it will. We got brake fluid. We got power steering fluid. Actually, let's see if the power steering works. Sure does. Power steering works. Obviously, I can't drive the car right now to see how well the brakes do, but it's running perfectly fine. That's kind of nuts, honestly. The car's been sitting for 5 years. Started right up. Let's see what happens if we take power from it. Still running. I don't know if you guys can see. Brake lights are on, so it's probably, there's a little switch on the brake pedal, and there's always this little plastic piece that either comes loose or breaks or whatever, but that's probably what it is, and I'll get under there and confirm that. But honestly, we're just gonna let this run and let it get up to temp and see how it idles at full temp, and yeah, basically want to let it run and get up to operating temperature, mainly to check and see if the radiator fan works, but also to see, you know, if it's gonna idle once it's fully warmed up. All right, y'all hear that? So now it's starting to surge. Alright, so right there, I know it kind of seems like I know what I'm doing, but I really don't. So there's two holes inside of the throttle body, and I just stuck my finger over both of them. The first one did nothing. The second one, if I stuck my finger over it about halfway, the idle kind of calmed down, and as you heard, it went back to normal. So, I mean, it could possibly have something to do with wherever that outlet leads. So you see, now that the radiator fan's kicked on, it's kind of leveling itself out. So that's odd. Alright, so I went ahead and shut the car off, but we learned a few things there. So one, you guys saw when I was sticking my hand down into the throttle body, I don't know if I'll be able to get an angle, but right there is a hole. That is the hole that I was sticking my finger over, right over here. I was sticking my finger over it, covering about 50 to 75% of the hole, and the idle smoothed out and went back to somewhat normal. Now I also tried it on that hole right there, and nothing happened at all. Even when I completely closed it, halfway closed it, nothing happened. So whatever that hole leads to, I mean, what I just did right there may be a completely normal thing, but I mean, I would assume whatever leads to that hole might be part of our problem. Now, I'm no Honda expert, so I'm just kind of guessing here. And this is pretty much the extent of what I'm going to do today. I really just wanted to see if the car would start, and it did. And also, on top of that, there was another part where once the car got fully warmed up, the fan kicked on and the idle kind of stabilized. Now the idle was still extremely high, but the fan kicked on and it stabilized. So it kind of makes me think, because these cars, the ICV is, I don't know what the proper terminology is. I want to say the ICV is driven by coolant, but that doesn't really sound right. But whatever the case may be, the ICV has coolant running through it, and you know, maybe there's an issue there. Maybe there's air in the system, because I know it's a pretty common thing. These cars have idle issues when there's air in the cooling system because of the ICV using coolant. But it's pretty interesting. We learned a little bit here. You know, the car runs. It runs decent. Nothing sounds out of the ordinary. The car's not smoking. I don't hear any kind of knocking, ticking, nothing like that. It runs, I mean, other than the idle issue, it runs how you would expect a 100,000 mile D16 to sound. So that's pretty much going to cover it for this episode of the Civic. Now, this car I'm not really planning on turning into a series like the Subaru is, but this is just going to kind of be a filler in between episodes of the Subaru. So I have no set schedule of videos like this. It's kind of just going to be one of those things that I tinker with, play around with, and make videos here and there on. But I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I only paid $800 for this car, and in my opinion, with the way the market is right now, maybe 3 years ago this would have been a $400 car, but the way the market is right now and the prices of things nowadays is insane. So for me to be able to pick this up for $800 and it runs is kind of insane. So you guys may have noticed in some of my other videos I had a different Civic hatchback sitting over there. It was same thing as this one. It was a 97 though. This one's a 2000. But I had a different one sitting back there, and I bought that one for dirt cheap, but never ended up getting a title for it, and I just didn't want to deal with that. I tried a couple of different ways. I was actually able to get it registered in Vermont, so it was legal to drive. Me personally, I prefer to have a title for my cars, and this one is a clean title, so that's a plus right there. But yeah, I mean, $800 sort of junkyard rescue Civic, runs, started right up, no problem. Idle's a little but that's pretty much going to be it for this video. I'm going to go do some research on this idle issue and see what kind of stuff I can find out. And then the next time you guys see this car, we're going to be working on it and getting it, you know, ready to drive, basically. The plan really is to get it running good enough to where it can drive, and then we'll start addressing other things. Obviously, it needs 2 front tires. It needs some attention back there in the quarter panel. And I don't think I mentioned it before, but one of the other reasons I bought this car was for the rust, as dumb as that sounds. But I kind of want to use it as a test subject to learn how to weld and do body work and stuff like that. So when it comes time, I could do it on that car and be pretty confident with it. So sounds kind of dumb that I bought a car that specifically had rust, but you know, to me it's going to be a learning experience. I'm going to learn how to weld and do body work and all that good stuff. But anyways, I'm rambling a lot. That's it for this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you guys want to see more of this, let me know. Depending on the response that I get, you know, will determine how much I post on this car. Me personally, I love these EK hatches. One of my favorite cars. Obviously, I'll never love it more than my RS, but I've always wanted one. I've always wanted to K-swap one. I've always wanted to just mess around with Hondas, and this is really the first one that I've had that I've been able to do that. So enough rambling. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.